family feels seeing this place fall into disrepair, this insane, crazy woman in control of it all, who their father, uncle, brother, whatever, never married this crazy bitch.
Sheila meets a man named Michael Deloge. Now, Deloge was born in 1967, and he lived primarily with his mother, Donna. As Michael grew older, he developed problematic behavior, eventually causing Donna and her husband, his stepfather, to divorce.
So it sounded like significant issues, behavior issues there.
Michael got into drugs, started obsessing over sadistic teachings, and was in and out of homeless shelters. Some would describe him as this diminutive, lonesome hobo type. Michael had gotten married in 1993 when his girlfriend was pregnant with their child. A son, Aaron, was born following the marriage. His problems with drugs and alcohol eventually led to a divorce with his wife, and Michael was back into the transient lifestyle. By 2003, he found himself in New Hampshire, where he ended up at the Crossroads Shelter, which was a homeless shelter, and the shelter where Sheila happened to search out farmhands.
Oh my God, it's like she's going down to the damn animal shelter and getting dogs or something. She just come by and scoop one up.
That is a great way to describe it.
Yeah, and then, something keeps happening to the damn dogs she gets, so she has to get another one.
Yes. He was living there when Sheila came into his world. She was looking for a farmhand to hire. Now, workers at Crossroads would describe Michael as being this tiny fella. He was very small in stature, very thin, frail, just a little guy.
He didn't stand a chance.
And he was also mentally challenged. We'll just say he was described as being mildly retarded. Sheila had hired several workers from Crossroads as farmhands and also to share her bed. And when Michael first meets Sheila, people say it seemed like maybe a good fit for him. He seemed happy and enjoyed life on the farm. He fell in love with Sheila pretty quickly. But by 2004, things started to take a turn for the worst when Michael's mother received a bizarre phone call in the early morning hours during the summer. It was a woman screaming into the phone, reciting scriptures. She appeared to be in some kind of psychotic rage.
Oh my God, that would freak me out so bad.
The woman said Michael was a child molester, a pedophile, and a rapist. She chastised Michael's mother for the behavior, blaming her. It's all your fault your son is like this. Now, in the background, his mother could hear Michael speaking, but like slurring words, and couldn't quite make out what was being said. Sheila then said that Michael had raped his younger siblings. After this phone call in July, Michael's family will never hear his voice again.
Wow, that poor family.
It is shortly after that his father receives a letter written by Michael. The letter claims that Michael had sex with his stepmother. The family is blown away by this. Now, Michael's siblings deny any kind of sexual contact with him. Michael's mom also received a letter making similar claims, stating that she was the problem and that Sheila had rescued him. Like, you've ruined my whole life. You've made me this person. I'm only here today because Sheila is my savior. She's scooped me up and she's helping me, and you guys are terrible people.
Oh my God. I'm going to, in my head, I imagine like he's been kidnapped and the kidnapper's holding a gun to his head, forcing him to write this letter.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying she did that, but
basically
she probably was write this letter or get out. Or
I think you're far off with that one, Dylan.
Yeah, and I think I'm sorry, right quick, I'll say, I don't think it's any surprise she kind of honed in finally onto the mentally disabled. Because oftentimes people who are mentally disabled are preyed upon by people with these strong personalities, and they tend to be abused more frequently by their abuser and for longer periods of time, which is perfect for what Sheila wants to get out of it. And they are less likely to access the justice system, again, perfect for Sheila, and more likely to remain in that abusive relationship.
So essentially the perfect victim.
The perfect victim.
For a person like Sheila.
I think it seems like she went for years, dominating these men, but they were, of normal capacity, if you will, and they would eventually get out. They would eventually leave or fight her back. But once she figured out, boom, I get this, person who's a little bit mentally challenged, which there's nothing bad about that, but it's the worst person for these poor people to be picked up by and abused by.
In March of 2005, Sheila wrote a note for small claims court claiming that Michael owed her $5,000.
What the hell?
She had him sign the statement with a payment plan saying he would owe her an extra $500 for each late payment.
Well, that's some pretty high interest.
Sheila then added herself to Michael's checking account. She said she should be able to access his money in case he had any medical problems.
Man, how do you even get people like getting that man, Bill, Mr. LaBarre, after all that abuse and going around fucking everybody, being just a horrible person, and in the end giving her power of attorney? I mean, I guess that shows you how completely and, over time she breaks these men down and dominates them in a way that where it's easier to do what she wants, period, or else.
In the winter, her neighbor reported seeing a man walking down the road as though he were in pain. His skin was sallow, almost the color of olives. He had a huge cut on his head, and he was dripping blood everywhere. When the neighbor asked Mikey, because they knew Michael Deloge from Sheila's property, "Mikey, what's wrong with you?" He simply answered, "Sheila."
Oh my God, somebody get an ambulance out there.
Then he hiked all the way back to Crossroads, which is like a 15, 20, 30 miles. I mean, it's a pretty good distance. These men are willing to walk 30 miles to get away from her.
Yeah, and he's all messed up and bleeding.
Yeah, he's covered in bruises. He told the workers that he was afraid of Sheila. She had beaten him while he worked for her, had been abusing him. He was terrified of her. Later, witnesses would come forward and talk about watching Sheila hit the man with sticks, beat him in the face and head on more than one occasion. Other farm workers, people who were delivering items to the property, neighbors who happened to stop by for some reason.
My God.
Yes.
Ongoing, just horrible abuse. It's almost, I wonder if anyone even ever reached out to local authorities in any of these cases, even the neighbor, like, I'm concerned, or I saw this guy. I mean, obviously the victims aren't doing it. Or I wonder if they even wanted to mess with her, like even deal with her.
Probably afraid of her because they knew Sheila's wrath was endless.
Maybe.
Sheila turned on a tape recorder and made Michael confess. And this isn't going to be something that she does more than once. She told him to state what he had done and how he'd molested a young girl. She prodded him with questions. I mean, I'm not going to go into detail, but it's pretty fucking disturbing. Like, did you touch her here? Did you do this to her? You did this, didn't you? And like I said, I'm not going to go into graphic detail because it's some pretty fucked up scenarios. She asked him about another victim, a young girl, someone he was babysitting, told him to admit that he enjoyed giving kids baths when he would babysit them in the past. She said that he did things sexually to her rabbits, which we should mention that Sheila has a ton of rabbits on her farm.
She loved the rabbits, right?
Free-range rabbits, and she treated them like kids, and people would say when you would drive up to the farm, it was just like rabbits everywhere.
Yeah, if you mess around, hit one of them rabbits, son, you're done.
Right. So she's claiming Michael's done sexual things to her rabbits.
Okay.
She talked about locking him in the chicken coop for punishment. She grabs the microphone and says, "He is not competent. He is not sane. He is not safe. He is a very dangerous person. Most pedophiles before they kill do exactly the same things as described by Michael Deloge." Now, after that tape was made, no one ever saw Michael again.
So I wonder if not that he should be being abused like this, but I wonder if he did molest kids. I wonder if he did any of that stuff.
I don't think so.
I think it's all in her
It
insane
is.
mind, right?
Yeah.
So it's giving her, she's validating what she's doing, her behaviors, and the whole Avenging Angel. She really believes that, right?
She told people he'd gone to New Haven. She contacted the Child Support Processing Center saying that Michael no longer lived at her residence. She then told the bank she wanted his name off the joint checking account. Now, remember, it was his account. She added her name to it. Now she's telling the bank, we need to remove him from the checking account.
I don't think you can do that.
Well, apparently she did.
Oh, my God. I couldn't get off a joint checking account with a fucking crazy ex. What the hell? I had to shut the account down.
Oh, my God. You was with Sheila. In 2006...
I was with a lazy Sheila.
Yeah,
she wouldn't go this far.
In 2006, Sheila met a young man named Kenneth County. And I know this is going to be a very long episode, but there's so much detail to the story we have to tell.
Yeah, it's like this woman's just now getting started with all this crazy shit.
So she meets this young man named Kenneth County in a hotel bar. Kenneth was 24 years old, having grown up in Wilmington, Massachusetts. Kenny was learning disabled, mentally challenged. My understanding is he was autistic, and he had the mental development of a 12-year-old. Kenny had hoped to join the Army, but didn't quite make it through boot camp and was rejected by the Army. He had finally moved out on his own, working as a car wash attendant, and he was living on his own in an apartment. But he was described by those who knew him as a very hard worker at the car wash, but barely literate. He was incredibly lonely. At one point, he attempted suicide. And though he was living on his own with a roommate, he and his mom were best friends.
But he's trying hard as he can to take care of himself and just have a, normal life for himself and do for himself. And, oh my God, this poor guy, and he's going to get caught up by Sheila. I feel so bad already.
He and his mother, they chatted every day on the phone, and they were very close. Kenneth desperately wanted to meet a woman and fall in love. He joined a phone sex line called Telemates, where people were looking for sexual partners. He happens to meet Sheila, and the two decide to meet up on Valentine's Day for a date.
So she just has all these feelers out, like fishing lines, to hook these guys.
Well, and I'll just take a moment to explain. So Sheila would join these phone sex lines, and she recorded all of her phone calls. There were like hours of recordings, and she would basically go through the phone responses, and she would only call back the men that she thought were maybe slow, mentally challenged, or that seemed like they didn't have a lot of self-esteem.
Right.
She was looking for that particular type of fella.
Her perfect person that she can dominate in every single way.
They meet up at this hotel bar, and as classy people do, they fuck twice in the car in the parking lot.
That's hot.
And she let him follow her to the farm. I think he got lost initially, but they decide to, meet back up, and Kenneth was instantly smitten with Sheila. He moved in with her almost immediately, leaving behind his car and personal belongings. He didn't take anything from the apartment where he lived with him. Sheila would claim the two bonded. She began calling him Adam instead of Kenneth or Kenny.
Oh, yeah, because that's a known nickname for Kenny.
During this time, Sheila claims that Adam, or Kenneth, began divulging horrible secrets, such as his mother forced him to have sex with her.
She's crazy.
Sheila would claim that Kenneth's mother was a nudist who beat him horribly, which caused Kenneth to develop an appetite for sexual sadism.
So here we go. It's the same scenario. I get this guy. He's slow, or whatever you want to call it, whatever proper. Poor guy is all I can say. And she starts building this up in her head. It starts swirling around in her crazy-ass brain of, the same cycle. He's done bad things. I've got to make it right.
Sheila would claim that Kenneth wanted to be beaten. Growing concerned, his mother, Carolyn, who hadn't spoken to him in quite a while, finally was able to reach him by phone. Now, Sheila would barely let him speak. Kenneth could be heard in the background crying. Sheila snatches the phone and says, "Kenneth is fucking 24 years old. Leave him alone. We're happy." Then hung up the phone. Carolyn, his mother, finally makes a police report about Kenneth. Cops who know Sheila fairly well at this point make a welfare visit to the farm. But the officers had learned that they had to come in pairs to the farm, and they were frequently called there either by Sheila or someone else, and they knew if they came alone, Sheila would expose herself to them.
So it's just known all over town. If you go out there, she's going to get naked or be weird.
Yes. When the officers asked to see Kenneth, Sheila refused. Instead, she went inside, called the Wilmington, Massachusetts Police Department to check if there was a report that had been made. When she learns that there has in fact been a missing persons report filed by Carolyn, Sheila delivers Kenneth to the officers. She finally brings him out